Hello and welcome to the latest edition of ISPA Insights, our series of member video interviews bringing you valuable insights on hot topics and trends in the UK broadband sector. I'm Andrew Kernahan, ISPA's Head of Public Affairs, and today I'm pleased to be joined by Juliette Scott, Senior Manager, All IP Migrations at Openreach, as well as Andrew Sayle, Broadband Portfolio Manager, and Lee Houston, Voice and Unified Communications Portfolio Manager at Zen Internet. So welcome all. Just as a reminder, Openreach are the national broadband network who connect more than 600 CSPs and are busy upgrading the UK to full fibre broadband. Zen Internet are a leading independent ISP with more than 25 years experience connecting customers and businesses. Today's topic is about the PSTN switch off, or as Zen Internet called it in their report from last year, the Great British Switch Off. This is happening in December 2025 and it's big, and I think we need to learn more about it today. So to start with, I'd like to ask you, Juliette from Openreach, what's all about? What's being switched off and why is this happening?
Hi Andrew, thanks. As you said, by 31st December 2025, the PSTN, old analogue phone system, will be withdrawn or retired. Now the PSTN is the public switch telephone network, and it's been in general use for the last century. It works by using the copper wires that are hardwired from homes and businesses to switching centres where the phone calls are connected to each other. Landlines are going digital across the UK, which means that voice calls will soon be digital or over a digital line in the same way that your broadband works. This whole process has already been underway since 2018, with around 2 million lines already upgraded to a digital service at a rate of tens of thousands a week.
That's a big job, lots going on. December 2025 seems like a long way away. Are there any key milestones that CSPs need to be aware of before that date?
Absolutely. So as well as stopping selling the legacy analogue services, we're now preparing to shut down and withdraw older analogue products in 2 trial areas, Salisbury and Mildenhall. I'm sure you'll have heard of them. And now we're notifying communication providers that these products will be withdrawn in spring 2023. So the Mildenhall trial is testing the processes for withdrawing wholesale line rental, WLR, and migrating customers from legacy copper services to replacement services, which will support the delivery of telephone services over broadband connections. Services like SOGEA, SOGEA, and SOTAP, SOTAP, which provide a digital line over copper where full fibre is not yet available. The Salisbury trial will test the processes for migrating customers to fibre services and ultimately withdrawing legacy copper services. Salisbury currently has a full fibre coverage in excess of 95% with a take-up of 27%, which is pretty good. The difference between the two is that in Salisbury, when people sign up to a new contract, whether you're switching, upgrading or regrading, they should be able to switch to a full fibre service, and that's where a digital line comes as standard. So quarterly FTTP stop sales is ongoing. Currently we're at 551 exchanges notified, with 98 just announced in February to land in February 2023. It's important to note that as an industry, we need to address key challenges when it comes to the PSTN switch off, including how we support vulnerable customers, businesses, and our managed migration process to help encourage movement off that WR3 base.
So it's an awful lot of work being started by Openreach, with a lot more to come. As a CSP that operates off the Openreach network, Andrew, how are you preparing for the changes ahead, both as a CSP but also as a reseller?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something we've been preparing probably for a couple of years or more now, and that's really getting the groundwork, all the new products that we'll need, the new strategic products in place so that we can start to move customers across. So FTTP was the first for us. So we actually started selling Openreach FTTP about a decade ago now, one of the original trial service providers, but we've accelerated the uptake of FTTP dramatically over the last couple of years. And then over the last 18 months or so, adopting SOGEA as well. So if you look at the last 3 months, it's probably in the region of more than 2/3 of our orders that are coming through for SOGEA and FTTP. So our approach is, one, connect new customers onto the new strategic products so that we're not making the problem any bigger. And then start to migrate existing customers across. So we've got 100, 200,000 customers that will need to be moved across over the next year or two. And they need to be they need to be managed and planned very carefully. So there's some customers that the switch will be simple. They don't use a phone line. We just convert their WLR and FTTC to a Sagia line. They'll be happy. There'll be other customers that do need a voice service, and Lee will talk to you more about that in a few minutes. And then we also need to be careful around how we handle vulnerable customers, so people that rely on their line not just for calls, but perhaps for health pendants, alarm systems, or and then in industry around perhaps they're using the line for monitoring, for diagnostic information, for critical national infrastructure to make sure everything's going on. And we need to put all of those into different cohorts and plan it out and manage. So cohort 1, new customers, nice and simple. Day 1, get them on the right products. Day 2, break customers down into the cohorts and then plan the migration of how we can get them across with the least impact as possible.
How are you feeling the awareness is amongst your customer base of the changes? I know your report last year had some slightly alarming statistics. I don't know if things have improved since then.
Yeah, I think it's mixed. So it depends. So we have we're a reseller as well. We've got customers, and the knowledge within that cohort of customers is very good. Our resellers know what's going on. Openreach done a good job of talking to them. ISPA have done a good job of talking to them, as well as the conversation we even had. So knowledge is there. They're at different stages in their preparedness, but the knowledge is there. The other customer types, it's very varied. So I think in the consumer space, it's improving. Some interesting articles in the sort of mainstream press, the BBC over the last few months, some of them quite dramatic, but it all helps with awareness and to make sure that everyone knows what's going on. And I guess they've often been talking about the worst case scenarios, that things when it can go wrong. Really important that we plan things properly to avoid those scenarios, or to minimize them as much as possible.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Juliette, Andrew just said there that you've been very supportive with Zen as they talk to their customers. I mean, how are you supporting CSPs in managing the transition? You must have multiple work streams in place.
Absolutely, we do. We've got lots of industry working groups, industry steering groups, bilateral. So, I'm pleased to say that Zen are one of our really engaged customers, really wanting to work through the plans. We've got a lot to do this year, especially for the trial, because we've got this year really to work out what does and doesn't work. So we really want to do as much as we can with our CPs this year, so that we can understand, what we need to do for the big switch off in December 2025. But we're always open to doing more. So, we're always open to suggestions about how else we can help, and we will do that where we can.
And I suppose a question to all of you on the call, do you think more could be done to raise awareness from, I suppose, a government perspective, perhaps a big campaign at some point to really make the general public aware of this? Because I imagine their knowledge is not huge, and understandably so.
I think it's a really good question. I think we really need to think about who should be positioning the message. Obviously for us, in terms of branding, our CPs are really, really well known, and it would be great for them to get the message out. We've got to look, I guess, at the obvious example of the digital switch over for TV, where the government did a big campaign for that. So we are talking to lots of different people, including Ofcom, and trying to work out who should and what can we all do. I think it's really important that we all play our part in that. Yeah,
definitely. I totally agree with all of that. I think there's a significant role, or probably the main role is for ISPs and service providers like Zen to talk to their customers. That's the forefront. But I think there is incredibly useful if the government could support that message with an overarching message, not dissimilar to the digital TV switch off, because that one of the barriers that could potentially be raised by customers, or one of the questions, is that, are you using this as an opportunity to sell me something? Do I need to do this now? Whereas if there was a message, a wider message that wasn't just branded as this ISP, then it could be something we could refer to. You may have seen the messages from government, or the advertising campaign around this. This is what Zen are doing about it, and then the two could work hand in hand. That would be my view.
And I'm sure Andrew, we all get the at the moment, all the scams that are coming through, people don't know what to believe. And I think something backed by an official body would be brilliant, because then we could refer back to that, and, it absolutely is really happening.
Yeah, it's something ISPA's talking to government about, and policymakers, and are keen to make sure that everyone's involved and playing their part in this huge change that we're about to see. And I suppose, talking of huge changes, there's huge changes going on across the industry as well, with lots of infrastructure investment and a big push on full fibre from Openreach, but of course other infrastructure players as well. Equally at service provider level, there's lots of growth there too, and then the ability to now sell faster, more reliable services to people. At the same time, the PSTN switch off looms large, and more besides. So, what are the alternatives to traditional services, Andrew, that are out there, and what are the benefits of these?
Yeah, so traditionally, people have had a phone line, and their broadband's been provided over the top. Everyone's familiar with that, having to have that line rental in place. And often we hear people saying they never use the phone line, they never make calls, it's only ever there for the broadband. And the switchover sort of takes away that need to have the phone line. Now, the costs are not going to be that dissimilar, and there's still the infrastructure in the ground that needs to be paid for, but it does simplify things. So if we're talking full fibre, there's lots of people saying, oh, it's not available to me yet, or it's not quite there, but it's growing quickly. I think if you break it down and you sort of you take the Blue Peter approach, which is it's the equivalent of a town a week, effectively, that Openreach are rolling out to. So Blue Peter approach, that's like how many swimming pools does it take? Is so many litres of water. But yeah, it's a town a week is being enabled with FTTP, or the equivalent of a town a week. And that means that we're seeing customers every single day we're contacting customers saying, you can upgrade to full fibre now, you can do this, and the switch is, if you don't want a phone line on it anymore, you don't need it. If you do want a phone line, we can provide you with a digital voice product, which will give you so much more than your traditional phone line. And as well as all of that, we can give you more speed and more reliability. So there's not many negatives for a customer. The biggest negative is you need to maybe take a day off work while an engineer comes around and does a bit of work. Or if you're working from home, you might be offline for a couple of hours while the engineer does the switchover. So I guess that's one of the negatives. Now, I'm generalizing quite a bit there, and it's very different for different types of customer. But on the whole, it's a good message if you can get full fibre and switching over. So slightly more complicated, or slightly harder sell for customers, in that the end experience from a broadband perspective is the same. So it's the same technology, VDSL for FTTC or for Sagia, but it does get away from needing the phone line, which is very valuable for a consumer often, or gives you more from your phone line. And I think Lee can talk a little bit about more about what we can do on phone lines with the switchover.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's no getting away from the fact that consumers' behaviour has changed over the last few years, right? And, all of the data suggests that people are making less and less voice calls from a personal perspective. Business is slightly different, but from a personal perspective, people are making less and less phone calls on a monthly basis. At the same time, the amount of data that people are consuming from a mobile device is increasing month on month, which shows two things. People are talking on the phone less, but communicating more. So during this process, we foresee a fairly significant amount of customers saying, actually, I don't need the phone line. I won't pay extra for a service that I no longer need. So they will cease to have a voice communication product that is connected physically to their home location, and they will potentially just use mobile. However, we're also seeing a large number of customers that the idea of losing not necessarily the ability to make and receive calls at home, but their telephone number, which, in some instances, I always reference my mum in these scenarios. She's lived in the same house for 25 plus years and is wedded to that telephone number as anything, despite the fact hardly anybody calls her on it. So for customers like that, in a consumer spaces, we'll be moving them to FTTC or Sagia, as Andrew's just mentioned, with the overlay of a digital voice product, which gives a set amount of minutes that they can call, the ability to fire up an app and make calls on there if I say she because I'm talking about my mum, but if they desire to do so. So it offers an enhanced experience to what the traditional WLR line at the home does. But then you look at on the other side of the coin, which are businesses and their readiness for this change. And we are possibly struggling to gain the traction in those conversations, as you would imagine. You know, businesses make and receive a lot of calls, and for most of them, their communication with customers is the most important part of their business. So trying to get the message to land to them about how big of a change this is and how they need to act and start to plan now, because it's, whilst we talk about 2025, as Juliette mentioned before, we have stop sell dates far ahead of that, 2023 being the main one. So businesses need to start to plan in these changes. And from an alternatives point of view, we are big advocates of unified communications and all of the benefits that can deliver over and above the traditional phone system with ISDN lines. And my message to all customers when I talk to them is don't just see this as an opportunity to replace like for like, and unplug the ISDN and plug in maybe a SIP trunk. Is use this as a catalyst to really review your overarching communication strategy. How do you want to interact with your customers? Because unified communications opens up a whole different level of functionality and capabilities to improve that customer experience. And if you're not thinking about those things, then arguably you're missing an opportunity.
I suppose, given the past couple of years as well, how you communicate to your customers and the systems you have in place to do that is even more critical than it ever has been.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We have been talking about the ability to work from home and all of the benefits of having flexible working or the ability to have disaster recovery as home working as a disaster recovery plan for years. If there is one positive potentially to come out of this last couple of years, it's that businesses have really opened up to the idea of delivering flexible working as a real tangible solution for their employees.
Yes, I think it's moved things on so quickly, maybe 10 years quicker than perhaps it would have done without. And of course, you need all the hard work and expertise of you guys to make it happen, as you've been doing for so long.
I think I've been ahead of the curve, Andrew, because I've been working from home for 10 years. I did, just before the pandemic started, though, I did get FTTP to my house. And I'd like to give you a lovely story about how awesome it's been now. I've got 3 needy teenagers in my house and working from home, and my husband works from home. And, I don't have the moans anymore. I don't have the moans about, oh, it's dropped out, it's not working. I haven't had any faults in the last 2 years. It's been a really reliable service. So somebody who says using it, say, I think I'm ahead of the curve. But it just works. And I think that's, for me, the difference moving to all IP than from where we were with the traditional, oh goodness, it rains. Is that going to affect my line, my broadband signal? Actually, now I don't even have to think about it. It just works. Yeah,
it's probably not snazzy enough for a marketing director. It just works probably should be the phrase instead of full fibre thing, but maybe that's another discussion. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Is there anything else you wanted to share about things you're doing around the switch off to anyone on the call at the moment? Otherwise, we can start to wrap up, I think.
Just echo what Lee was saying before, in that if you don't already have a plan, start to put one together and use it as an opportunity to review the strategy about how you communicate, whether that's calls, unified communications, your connectivity to the internet. And it's just it's an opportunity for you to look at everything in the whole and then and draw up your strategy based on that.
What kind of questions should people be asking their CP?
In the immediate term, I think CPs need to be talking to customers about drawing up a roadmap. So some of our larger organizations, some of our larger customers, is that, they're multi-site. They've got locations all across the country, and the rollout of stop sell exchanges will impact them at various points over the next several years. So they should be talking to their CP about, okay, what's happening and when, because we know we have advanced notification of some of these areas. So they can help inform that strategy. Because the idea of a business, especially a large one, changing overnight from traditional telephony to UC is not going to happen, right? It's a big project, and it is cross-company, cross-divisional. So being able to draw out a timeline, working with your CP to draw out a timeline of how you get from A to B is really important.
Can I just say, I feel like you two have said all the words that I would have loved you to have said. Absolutely, planning for us. We've got a real focus with Salisbury and Mildenhall, and we really want everyone to get on board. And planning is absolutely the right way to go. So, in terms of looking at what assets you've got, looking at what you want to do with them, if you want to upgrade them, just think through the really difficult things as well. I know sometimes it's easy to put the difficult things to the back of the queue, but actually we can work with you up front, and we want to be tackling these things. We want to be learning in the next year. And so please, come to your migration managers or your account managers in Openreach and we can really help you work through it all. But planning absolutely is the key to this.
If you're an ISP or a business, then feel free to contact Zen, and we'll be able to support you on that as well. You may be a WLR and you're thinking, how am I going to provide services now that I won't be able to provide WLR anymore? Well, the likes of Zen can help you with that. So yeah, reach out to Zen if you're an ISP or a business, and we can help you with putting together that plan.
Thank you. Well, that was very enlightening. Calls upon me to say thank you for joining us today. You will see more from ISPA on the PSTN switch off, banging the drum to raise awareness. But yeah, thank you very much, Andrew, Lee and Juliette, for joining us today. That brings to a close another ISPA Insights. I'm Andrew Kernahan. Thank you and goodbye.